Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 177. Really great guest today, a guy who's actually trained with us since his early high school years, has made it all the way to the big leagues so he can speak to the high school, college, and major league dynamic. Also, a guy who's got a really awesome background in multi-sport participation and learning to compete across a variety of disciplines. So I think he has a ton of lessons to share. Really articulate guy who had some early success in his career, and it's going to be an exciting one to follow in the years ahead. So I think we're in for a great show. This episode is brought to you by Hawken Dynamics, which is based in the US with offices in Australia and the UK. They believe that technology is most useful when it stays out of your way. That's why in 2016, Hawken engineered the first wireless force plate solution with a mobile app, making it the quickest, easiest to use, and most robust solution on the market for group testing. Today, it is still the only fully validated wireless force plate solution that exists, something that's extremely important when evaluating marginal gains on the world's best athletes, monitoring readiness, or returning athletes back from an upper or lower extremity injury. It's trusted by all sports organizations, large and small, as well as tactical, military, and rehabilitation environments around the globe. It's force plate testing in the palm of your hand with research-grade accuracy. We use Hawken Dynamics force plates at Cressey Sports Performance, and they're a crucial part of our evaluation process, not to mention a vital resource for monitoring fatigue and evaluating the efficacy of our performance and rehabilitation programs. Whether it's finding the sweet spot on the force velocity curve or keeping a close eye on asymmetries, these force plates are used all day, every day at CSP. Their customer service is also top-notch, and they're wildly responsive to inquiries from both existing customers and prospects. Be sure to check them out at www.hawkendynamics.com/Cressey to learn more. You can also give a listen to their VP of Performance, Drake Berberet, on episode 174 of the Elite Baseball Development Podcast. Again, that's hawkendynamics.com/Cressey. HAWKINDYNAMICS.com/Cressey, CRESSEY. Give it a shot, you won't regret it. Today's guest is an infielder who was born and raised in Delaware and won Gatorade Player of the Year honors in Delaware his senior year of high school. He finished his high school career as the state of Delaware's all-time leader in runs scored and stolen bases. He was also a three-time All-State soccer player, leading the state in goals over his four-year high school career. He was drafted in the 38th round of the 2018 MLB draft by the Cleveland Indians, but opted to instead attend the University of Virginia. At UVA, he transitioned from shortstop to third base and started all 137 games over the following 3 years, finishing with a .316 career average. He led the ACC in hits as a junior and was named to the All-Tournament team in 2021 when UVA played in the 2021 College World Series. The Oakland A's drafted him in the second round of the 2021 MLB draft, and at the end of 2022, he played in the Arizona Fall League. In the spring of 2023, he played for Team Israel in the World Baseball Classic. After a strong start to the season in AAA, he was called to the big league by the A's on July 14, 2023. In his first 69 Major League Baseball games, he batted .267 with 40 runs, 20 doubles, 14 home runs, 32 RBIs, and 14 stolen bases. He was also named the American League Rookie of the Month for August 2023. Please welcome to the show, Zack Gelof. What's up, Zack? Thanks for joining.
Happy to be here.
This is a good one, man. We've had a lot of good conversations about development, both for you and your brother, and talked to your dad about it as well, and kind of seen your progress over the years. So I think it'd be good to share this with a larger audience. Let's talk about Zack Gelof, the high school athlete. I know you've spoken a lot about your multi-sport kind of participation being something that was important as a key part of your longer term development, but maybe take it from the top for folks who haven't heard the story before.
I think just growing up, Jake and I played pretty much every sport we could. Baseball, obviously, soccer, basketball, football, even a year of lacrosse. So we did it all. And then in high school, I think, I played baseball and soccer and then also kicked for the football team my freshman year. So, definitely played multi-sports. I love basketball. I think the toughest thing for me was giving that up so I could train and really focus on, playing multi-sports, but also focusing in the weight room too when I had some downtime. So, I think it was huge for me just playing multiple sports, being really competitive and, having fun, being, trying to be a really good teammate and help out other guys.
I think you're being really humble too. Like, you were a pretty good soccer player. There was a fair amount of Division I interest at the time, wasn't there?
Yeah. I don't know how far I would have gotten. I feel like I probably could have gone to a smaller D1 and played pretty good, but I know I led the state in goals my senior year. We got to the state semifinals. So I was a pretty dominant soccer player. Probably more dominant in high school than baseball. It's pretty hard to dominate in baseball when you're
It's a
still
good
getting
point.
out six
Yeah.
out of 10 times in high school. So
You're one out of
um,
nine guys versus like in soccer, you can really take over a game.
exactly.
So I know, I've spoken a lot about multi-sport participation and the benefits of it. We talk about getting exposed to a lot of different movement patterns. We talk about rolling with different social circles. We talk about, something you just mentioned, like the competition aspect of it. Is there one of those things that you think that was the most important for what it meant for you and your long-term development?
Yeah, I think they're all really important, but the one that sticks out to me is just the competition aspect in playing a sport where maybe you're necessarily not the best at, but and you're at a disadvantage to a guy that's his first sport, but you still have to go out there and compete and maybe be, um, along with those lines, also being a really good teammate of playing a role or whatever it is. So I think for me, it was just the competition aspect of playing different positions or being maybe the role guy or if you're playing basketball, you just might be the guy that stays in the corner and shoots the threes and plays good defense. But, in soccer, it was early on, it was in high school, it was me playing really good defense, winning air balls. And then as I moved on throughout my career, I kind of had to score more for us to, be successful. So I think just the competition aspect of playing different roles really helped.
I don't think people realize that when you go to like the big leagues or even when you go to a Division I program, like everybody on that team is the best player in the history of their town. Like when you go to UVA, like every one of them was all state, every one of them was an all American. And that can quickly punch in the face. So I like the idea of like understanding how to be a role player, how to fit in, even when you might be one of the better athletes there. Maybe in that same vein, you attended UVA. Um, what were the things that you think took you from, you were a high school draft pick, and then obviously, after your junior year, you were a draft pick as well. But what made you a guy who was much more big league ready when you left UVA 3 years after that high school draft, where you maybe weren't ready as an 18-year-old?
Man, I think just valuing your time and using your time wisely in college was huge because you wake up, especially freshman year. It was an 8 a.m. class. You had to basically. I was lucky enough to have a moped, but I have to grab lunch sometimes with a teammate on the back of it, and I had to balance the box of lunch, get to practice, barely get to eat it, get out there, and still try to get the extra work in to be ready to go, and not just be ready for the first stretch. So I think just balancing time was huge. And then for me, going on those high school visits to UVA multiple times and sitting behind the turtle, like I'm a visual learner. And when I set goals, I really want to, and when I see like, this is what I want to do in a few years, I kind of just, I try not to see I see the big picture too sometimes, but I look at it and I'm like, this is what they're doing. These are the guys who are successful here. This is what they do day to day, how they look. And I think for me, it's just like, all right, once I got there and I saw what these other guys with the successful first rounders were doing and kind of just carried myself that way up until college. And ultimately, going into it freshman year, knowing that, hey, I wanted to win this third base spot and it wasn't an option to lose it. And I think that, it goes back to the competition aspect that I think, it's a progression of trying to start freshman year and then you want to be even better because there's levels to the college game, just like in baseball in the major league level too. But just starting off, I think it just goes back to the competition aspect and really just setting goals.
That's awesome. I know your dad talked about like how valuable it was for your crew to go to Omaha and like actually see it when you guys were in high school. And I'm sure there was an element of like visualizing you wanting to play there, in the years that followed. Do you think that's one advantage that college players have over high school draft picks? Like, let's be real, nobody's playing in front of, UVA. I want to say it's 6 or 7 thousand people in the stadium. Like they sell it out pretty regularly. Like it's a big time in college baseball town. You don't always get that in like the podunk minor league field in the middle of nowhere. Like, do you think that was really, really important for you from a developmental standpoint, is to like play in front of big crowds, experience that kind of, environment?
Yeah, it was huge. I think UVA is getting a lot more fans nowadays than we did back in the day. Not back in the day; it was only a few
Yeah.
years ago. But I think for me, along with playing with the big crowds in college, I think you just learn how to win because it's all about winning in college. And then, you know, if you're fortunate enough to get drafted pretty high as a high schooler, it's more development, 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 and then you get to the big leagues, and it's kind of like, hey, you have to learn how to win and be dominant and be competitive. And I think in college, you kind of learn that first, along
Mhm.
with winning and being a good teammate and, feeling like crap on a Sunday with all
Mhm.
your guys showing up to practice. Like, I think that's real. And I think some of those lessons going through the ups and downs kind of behind the scenes where, the pro guys can't really
Yeah,
um, see that as much. But I think just being, around the teammates and going through that experience was huge.
that's awesome. Then you were like most of the really good athletes we see, like you were a shortstop in high school, and then the herd kind of thins at that position. And guys who else? Or you went to third base when you got to UVA, stayed there when you got to pro ball, and then shifted to second base over the last couple of years, and that was what you played exclusively in the big leagues this year. I'm curious, how did those adjustments go? Maybe how are those positions different in your mind, and what maybe position recommendations would you make to players who want the versatility to have all of them or are in the midst of a transition?
There were a lot of
That
questions
was
in
a lot of questions there. Sorry.
there. I'm just going to start with,
Yeah.
yeah, obviously, I think the best athletes, if you're a righty, usually just play shortstop. And I think even some of the outfielders that, go to play D1, a lot of them play shortstop for their high school team. So that was what I did. And then, you go to college, and actually I played summer ball going into college. So I knew that, they wanted me to play third base exclusively
Mhm.
just because I knew that there was an upperclassman that was starting short. And I knew that with my body type, I think I kind of profiled better as a third baseman long term. And then I just worked at it, and that's something I wanted to do. And I think if you're a shortstop, I think that's the most athletic position that you can move to third, second, first, anywhere in the outfield. So that was really important. I think for me, playing the difference between short and third is more one step to your left, one step to your right, in or back. And then short, it's kind of positioning it and kind of doing a curve, almost like a banana, to get your feet going towards first, which is a little bit different and kind of like setting up the throw. So third base was a big transition, I think, for me, but then I think it worked out pretty good, playing every day in college at third base. And then into pro ball, I kind of did 50-50 third and second. And I kind of, as I got to train with you guys every day exclusively in an off season, I think I got more athletic. Um, and I was able to kind of say, hey, like, I think I can play second base too, if that helps. And with my, profile, I think that could work out too. And I went over there, did a little bit, and they said, wow, it looks really good. So, and then I obviously transitioned into strictly playing second base. And I think at second is basically like shortstop, but just a shorter throw. And
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing there is just the double play turns that you have to be very, very consistently really good at.
We talked like after your first season in pro ball that it was like a key thing for you to improve defensively. And I think it's really easy to be like, well, second is this, short is this, third is this. It's very different to have like an actual action plan of how to take big step forward and be better. And you're a guy who is, type A in the best way possible, right? You set your mind to something, and it's not like just like go out and wing it. It's actually like have an idea of how to execute on it. What do you think the key focus points that you made were that took you from initially a below average defender in pro ball to being, like above average at a new position? Like, do you think looking back, like there were like certain work habits, was it pre-pitch hop? Was it studying more film? What was it that really helped you to take that step forward?
I think for me, obviously, just got up to the big league, so hopefully I can even get better as a defender,
Mhm.
which I think I will. But for me, I think it was just developing a routine with our coach, with Oakland, and then for myself personally. And we did that routine every day, so that helps with me with my hands and positioning and that aspect. And then, you know, I think for BP, it's tough because you don't want to do too much. You got to be ready to go at 7 p.m. But for me, it was just doing one round of strictly just following the ball into the hitting zone and getting my feet down on time consistently. And I think I got better and better as time went on with that. Um, and then, just building a routine and being consistent with it. And then, like we talk about all the time, is just staying athletic in the weight room. And I think that really helps out, once you get on the diamond. And I think when you add that with confidence and it coincides with each other, I think
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
How was the adjustment from minor leagues to the big leagues? I'm genuinely curious because this is obviously your longest season, played the most games you have in your career, and it's much longer than a college season. But did you find yourself having to make adjustments by the end of the year, or was it one of those things where just, enthusiasm and excitement about actually being there is what kind of carries you forward in that first year?
I think enthusiasm carries you for a few weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, they find what you're not as good at, and they just try to pick you apart and go there until you can prove you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, for me, the whole year as a whole, it was awesome. It was the most baseball games I've ever played. And it ultimately started in spring training and then going to play for Team Israel in the WBC. So I got that experience of playing Venezuela, DR, Puerto Rico in a crazy hostile environment,
Yeah.
basically on the road because they're so enthusiastic down there and had a really good showing. And then I go and play minor leagues, play 69 games in AAA, do really well, obviously ups and downs, but, I felt like I got better as the year went on. And then after All-Star break, I get the call and then play another 69 games in the big leagues. And I think enthusiasm of, wow, this is awesome, I'm excited to be here, kind of just takes you for me, it was like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it was more like, hey, I'm kind of done with the honeymoon phase. I want to stay here. Like it's nice to
Yeah.
debut, but my dream wasn't to be like it was to be a major league player for a long time and be really successful at it. So I think after it was, I think it was like 10, probably closer to 2 weeks in, there was now I need to, do what I need to do to be really good at it at my job, my profession, because I think the window for success is so small in this game, in this industry, that there were adjustments that I had to make, a few weeks in and really try to hone in on this being my profession and trying to be really good at it.
Did the routine change from minor leagues to the big leagues? I mean, it's just a different, travel arrangements, and there's more like time zone changes and things like that. How did your in-season adjust, and what does it look like now in the big leagues?
The in-season adjustment really didn't change much from a hitting standpoint. And then for a fielding routine, it got a little bit better once I got in the big leagues and I found out what I really like to do. And then in terms of the adjustment from AAA to the big leagues, I think the big thing was when you're in the minor leagues, it's more prospects saying like, this is what my stuff plays with, and I'm going to just throw what's best for me. And then when you get to the big leagues, they know what they're good at, but then they try to attack the hitter and their weaknesses. And then at the end of the day, it seems to just come down to execution, from which I've learned. And obviously, I'm new to the big leagues, but by the end of it, I feel like I had a good grasp of what the things that I struggled with and then things that I was really good at. And I think the key for me was when I first came up was high fastballs, high and in fastballs were beating me, or that was the thought. And then I started hitting them out, and then they were like, okay, this doesn't work anymore. Now let's go to this pitch. And then when they found success with that, it was like, all right, now they're going to keep doing that until I can prove I can either hit it or take it and then be what I'm good at. So there are always adjustments, but I think the biggest thing in the big leagues is just, knowing what you're good at and being dominant and confident about it. And then just knowing if you're not good at something, you can just take that pitch or, try to get better at it, obviously, but just knowing what you're really good at and what makes you you.
Yeah. What about like the daily routine? Like, did you find that you had to streamline it? Did you find that you had more time to do it in the big leagues? Like, what does a day at the ballpark maybe look like for you?
For me, my daily routine, I thought got really much more detailed, and I had more fun with it because I think my whole dream of being a big leaguer was awesome. And then once I got there and realized like, hey, I think I'm pretty good at this thing, I think I can do it for a while, I just kind of fell in love with it that much more. So for me, I would show up to the ballpark around 1:30, get there, eat some lunch that they had for us, change. I would I wasn't doing this the first few days in, but after 2 weeks, I like to go down to the computer room and do some scouting that I like to do. And then I started my warm up, and if I lifted that day, I would lift. If not, I would be warmed up, and I would do my cage routine. And then at a certain point, we would go to do glove work as well. And then we had BP and all that stuff. So I feel like I had more time, or probably around the same amount of time, but I just was more detailed and more thought out of what I wanted to do each day, and I was confident about it.
Right on. Now I'm curious, did you get into naps? And the reason I ask that is you're an early morning person. Like, you're one of our early guys in the off season. And I know like that's one adjustment for guys, right? You typically play at like 7 o'clock at night. Like, how did you handle like the sleep in the big leagues? Because people don't realize how many time changes there are, how many, getaway games there are where you might get in at, 4 or 5 in the morning. How did you learn about sleep playing in the big leagues compared to AAA when it's like, full week in one spot, every Monday off? Was it an adjustment on that?
I've never slept better than I have ever than I was in the big leagues. I
That's
mean,
awesome.
the just the mental and physical exhaustion every
Mhm.
day when you're at the park with the 30,000 fans plus. Um, I'm not an app person, and hopefully I can get into it maybe. But for me, I don't operate on naps, and
Mhm.
I'd go through the day, I'd get 9 hours of sleep, and I'm talking like I fall in my bed, and I'm out for 9 hours, and I felt exhausted if I got any more, and I
Mhm.
felt a little tired if I was anything less than nine. So I was sleeping great, and it's awesome because I think the mental exhaustion is what people don't really think about.
Mhm.
And then also, I think the food you're getting in the big leagues
Mhm.
is so much better. So I think, um, everything is better accommodating in
Mhm.
the big leagues. It seemed like my experience so far is that I was sleeping really well, and hopefully can get back to it
That's
soon.
awesome. I'm jealous. Let's talk about off-season training adjustments. Like we made some modifications. I think we did some stuff last year, and I think we're attacking it maybe a little bit harder this off-season. And I think it's possible because you did a really good job at a young age of establishing a training foundation in high school and then obviously at UVA. What changes do you feel like have been helpful now that you've been at this, a longer time in the weight room?
I think for me, the important thing obviously is getting that foundation. I think I've been fortunate enough to, have a really good foundation with the things that I've done. And then for me now is just getting into the athletic, explosive movements while also doing, some of the end range maintenance stuff for my shoulder and arm care. But the thing that I've really loved is just like the rotational movements. And then you have the combination of going vertically. I love sprinting. And I think before I never really sprinted enough. And now I feel like I'm doing, stuff with form running, doing sleds, and then also doing tempo runs, like whatever it is. I just feel so athletic and so young. I mean, I am 24, obviously, but I just feel like athletic all the time now. And I think just staying on top of my routine, in the big leagues of just, doing my soft tissue, stretching, activation stuff. I think that also helps too for, staying on the field and performing.
Absolutely. Do you feel like strength comes back a little quicker every offseason now? Just because you've had it in the past so much that it doesn't take 4 months to build, you can get it in one now.
Yeah, strength really, I feel like doesn't leave. I mean, I'm a guy that I only took like 2 to 3 weeks off from not really lifting any weights, but then after that, I feel like I got strength back within a week, and I think that just goes back to the foundation of doing the same thing every day and getting in your lifts. And I'm a guy that I think for me a few years ago or even 2 years ago, I was doing splits of upper body, lower body, and I think for me somewhere where I've noticed that my body responds better to doing the total bodies,
Mhm.
um, and doing it 3 days a week or 2 days a week in season.
Mhm.
And that's something that I've noticed personally. I know people are different with that, but that's something that I think I've found success in.
Yeah, I think the nice thing is strength sticks around really easily. Power tends to detrain faster, but if you do enough in season just to preserve it, it can go a long way, allowing you to really attack a bunch of other qualities when the off season rolls around. You have more, basic recovery capacity to devote to all that stuff. I may be redundant with some of our earlier conversations, but it might be good to hear it all in one place. You moved pretty quickly to the big leagues, right? You were there in really under 3 years. I'm curious, what was the biggest adjustment going from AAA to the big leagues? Was it the scouting reports and that they knew how to attack your weaknesses? Was it something completely different?
I think for me, I kind of touched on it earlier, just the scouting reports, and I think they have a really good grasp of what you don't do well and what you do well, and then it ultimately just comes down to execution. But in AAA, there's obviously men up and down the minor leagues, but when you get to the major leagues, it's grown men, and it's their jobs and their livelihood providing for their families, and I think you feel that a little bit more, and I think the preparation is there even more in the big leagues because it's so important on winning. Um, And it's awesome because the competition is that much better. And I think people, will rise to the occasion. So those were just some of the things that I noticed. And I think what makes people great is you have to adjust because, you're not going to always be successful. But, once you learn that, hey, this is what I do well, or, this is what I'm really good at, trying to stay away from trying to do the things you're not good at and just honing in on your zone or whatever it may be. But, it's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. Speaking of fun, your younger brother Jake was drafted this year by the Dodgers. Actually, the same overall pick that you were a couple years ago by the A's. What was the first bit of advice that you gave to Jake about making the adjustment from college to pro ball? Actually, UVA more specifically to pro ball.
Um, well, I guess the first thing I said to him 2 days after getting drafted was once I got called up, I said, "Suck it, Jake," because I won up them from getting drafted, and I say, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to the big leagues now." So that was the funny thing, but I think for me, it was just he really didn't need to hear much from me. I think he has a good grasp of what he's doing, but I think it's just now it's knowing what he needs to do to get ready to go compete at 7 o'clock or whatever the time the game's at. So for me, it's just getting what you need to get in to be ready and go do your thing.
Absolutely. All right. We always do a lightning round on the tail end of every podcast. Advice for teenage Zack Gelof.
Advice for teenage Zack Gelof would just be keep going, keep doing your thing, and dominate.
I like it. What players do you like to watch and why?
I like to watch three players. I like DJ LeMahieu, Marcus Simeon, and Trey Turner. And I think the combination of those three are what I kind of try to emulate myself of, being fast and being athletic like Trey Turner, Marcus Simeon being the same guy every day and showing up and, playing 162. And then DJ LeMahieu of being really huge, big infielder that just rakes. So
Good choices. You're a big student of the game, and I know you're a high academic guy, obviously a UVA student. So, what's a must-read book that you think every athlete should consume?
I'm not the biggest reader, but the one I do really like is "Obstacles the Way" by Ryan Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Or like a stoic, and just especially in baseball, you're failing 7 times out of 10 if you're a Hall of Famer. So I think just knowing that your experience of going through struggles makes you stronger is huge.
I like it. And then last but not least, what's next for you? What do you need to do to be the sustainable, successful long-term big leaguer that you referred to earlier in the podcast?
Stay on the routine, stay disciplined of what I want to do, and just stay healthy, focus on the routine in the weight room to just show up and be ready to play and stay on the field.
Right on, man. You're an easy guy to bet on. We've seen the work, in person for a really long period of time, and certainly appreciate all of the hard work you put in. Folks can find you on both Twitter and Instagram. It's Zack Gelof, ZackGelof. Thanks for taking the time, dude. This was fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I feel like I made it. I was always listening to these growing up in high school and college, so now I finally get on.
You're gonna be able to. You have bragging rights at the gym when some of these guys who haven't been on just yet come on. So make sure to hold your head high as you walk in tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Thanks again.
Yep. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. We really appreciate you carving out some time in your schedule to listen, not just to this episode, but also to some of the episodes from our archives. If you enjoy what you heard, we'd love it if you'd share it with friends, colleagues, and teammates, as well as leave us a review on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Thanks again for your time.